A black executive walks into her own luxury hotel and is told that we are full guests. She doesn't object. She makes a phone call and everything changes. She doesn't want anything fancy, no welcome party, no red carpet, just the keys, a warm bed, and a night to prepare before a board meeting. But what she finds inside the hotel leaves her shocked and disappointed. Chicago on a winter night, with small snowflakes floating in the air, landing softly on the towering rooftops and clinging to the worn pathways. The street lights flickered against the wet pavement, creating a shimmering yet cold glow. Luxury cars lined up in long rows in front of the Regalia Grand Hotel, as streams of people moved in and out continuously, as if this place never slept. Briona Taylor, a poised African-American woman, walked slowly towards the revolving glass doors of the hotel. She wore a light brown wool coat, short leather boots dusted with snow, and a light beige scarf loosely wrapped around her neck, just enough to keep warm in the biting cold. Beneath her coat was a simple business dress, not overly fancy but exuding neatness and subtle elegance. No bodyguards, no entourage, and no signs of grandeur. She walked with a quiet confidence, the kind of confidence that didn't need to be loud or boastful. Each step seemed purposeful, as if every stride carried the weight of resilience and determination. Her deep, calm eyes scanned the surroundings, taking in every detail of the hotel lobby. Sparkling crystal chandeliers hung high above, golden wall paintings reflecting an air of opulence. At the reception desk, Jody, a young woman with perfectly curled blonde hair and brightly colored neon nails, was busily tapping on the keyboard. She glanced up when Briona approached, offering a practiced, polite smile. Yet as she took in Briona's appearance, the smile subtly shifted into one of cautious skepticism. Briona greeted her with a gentle smile. "Good evening. I'd like to check in." Jody hesitated slightly, her fingers still moving over the keyboard. "Your name, ma'am?" "Taylor. Briona Taylor." Jody furrowed her brow, her hands pausing mid-typing as she glanced at the screen. "I'm sorry, I don't see your name on the list. The hotel is currently fully booked. We only accommodate guests with prior reservations." For a brief moment, silence hung in the air. Briona's gentle smile didn't waver, and her expression remained calm and composed. "That's fine. There's a special room always reserved for me. I am the owner of the hotel." Jody froze, her eyes widening for a moment before narrowing in disbelief. A slight smirk formed on her lips. "Owner? You're joking, right?" Briona didn't change her expression. Her eyes remained steady on Jody. She didn't need to prove anything, because the truth would inevitably reveal itself. Deep down, Briona knew that someone like her was rarely acknowledged as a figure of power, solely based on words. As Jody's voice of rejection echoed through the lobby, Briona stood there, calm yet feeling a familiar heaviness in her chest. The feeling of being underestimated, doubted, and judged purely based on appearance. The curious eyes of other guests in the lobby began to focus on Briona, as if she had just claimed something outrageously impossible. She could feel the pressure building around her, but it didn't sway her resolve. One quick phone call would be enough to change everything. In that frozen moment, Briona took a deep breath, reminding herself that she had faced this kind of situation too many times before. Her heart remained steady because she knew exactly where she stood and who she was. After all, real strength doesn't come from validation by others, but from the unwavering confidence in oneself. The atmosphere in the hotel lobby seemed to freeze after Briona's calm declaration. "I am the owner of this hotel." The statement echoed through the space, clear and unwavering, yet it left Jody momentarily stunned, her eyes widening, her lips parting as if to laugh it off. The tension hung heavy in the air, blending doubt with confusion. Briona remained composed, her gaze fixed steadily ahead, unmoved by the skepticism around her. Jody struggled to process what she had just heard. She glanced sideways at her colleague, as if seeking confirmation that this was some kind of joke, then turned back with a forced, awkward smile. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we're really busy right now. If you don't have a reservation, I'm afraid." Briona didn't react, only reached into her coat pocket and calmly retrieved her phone. She dialed a number, and with a measured, unruffled tone spoke briefly. "This is Briona Taylor. I am currently being denied service at the Regalia Grand Hotel, despite being the owner. I need the regional director here immediately." The call was short, precise, and carried the weight of authority. Jody's face paled slightly, and her hands trembled as she pressed the intercom button, calling for the manager. A few guests nearby began to whisper, curiosity piqued by the unexpected situation unfolding before them. Moments later, Andrew, the hotel manager, appeared from the back office, his expression stern and indifferent. His eyes swept over Briona from head to toe, clearly judging her appearance. He approached with a rigid stance and spoke with forced politeness. "Good evening, ma'am. Is there an issue here?" Before Briona could respond, Jody jumped in hastily. "She claims to be the owner of the hotel, but there's no reservation under her name." I tried to explain, but Andrew cut her off with a curt nod, then addressed Briona directly. "Ma'am, we'll need to verify your identity. Otherwise, I may have to ask you to leave the premises." Briona's calm smile never wavered as she replied, "You don't need to remove me. My team will be here soon." Just as her words settled, the glass door swung open, and two sharply dressed men stepped inside. Mark Evans, the regional director, and Linda Grayson, the vice president, moved swiftly across the lobby, their faces filled with concern. Mark hurried forward, his voice firm yet respectful. "Mrs. Taylor, I apologize profusely for the misunderstanding. We'll handle this immediately." Andrew's face blanched, his confidence crumbling as reality hit him. Linda shot him a severe glance before addressing him in a low, authoritative tone. "We need an urgent discussion about customer service protocols. Prepare a full report on this incident." Jody's shoulders slumped as she realized her grave mistake. The earlier smirk wiped clean from her face. The guests who had been watching now whispered among themselves, their expressions ranging from astonishment to sympathy. Briona did not show satisfaction or triumph. She simply stood her ground, reflecting on how deeply rooted biases could influence even basic human interactions. It wasn't just about being mistaken for an outsider. It was the ongoing struggle to be seen and acknowledged beyond stereotypes. As the tension slowly eased, Briona took a quiet breath, feeling the familiar sting of being underestimated. Despite everything she had achieved, she was still fighting the same battles, proving herself in places that bore her name and legacy. Staring out at the glistening street beyond the lobby doors, she resolved that no amount of success could completely erase the prejudice that clung to her presence. But she knew that by standing firm and composed, she was reinforcing a powerful message, that respect and recognition should never be determined by appearances. The hotel lobby remained frozen in silence after Mark Evans and Linda Grayson arrived. Their eyes swept over the scene, assessing the situation with professional precision. The tension hung heavy in the air, and no one dared move. Not even Andrew, the manager who had just been so arrogantly dismissive moments earlier. Briona stood there, composed and unwavering, as if nothing in the world could shake her confidence. Linda was the first to break the silence, her voice firm but controlled. "Andrew, I want an explanation right now." Andrew stammered, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. I didn't know. I was just following protocol. This woman claimed to be the owner, but she didn't have a reservation. Linda raised a brow, cutting him off with a glance before turning to Briona with a respectful tone. Mrs. Taylor, I deeply apologize for this inconvenience. We will resolve this immediately. Briona merely gave a slight nod, uninterested in prolonging the discomfort. Mark stepped forward, lowering his voice as he addressed Andrew. Do you even know who Mrs. Taylor is? She's not just any guest. She's the founder and owner of this hotel chain. Her name is on every contract, every document related to the Regalia Grand. You just humiliated the very person who built this place. Andrew's face turned ashen, his confidence crumbling into dust. Jody, the receptionist, stood frozen behind the counter, her eyes wide and lips quivering. A few guests who had witnessed the incident whispered among themselves, glancing at Briona with a mixture of admiration and shame. Linda fixed Andrew with a stern look, then addressed Mark. We need an emergency meeting to discuss service protocol and ensure this never happens again. Briona calmly approached the reception desk, placing her worn leather bag down. Her voice was low but firm. I'm not here to humiliate anyone, but the way I was treated last night is unacceptable. It's not just about me. It's about the mindset behind how guests are perceived. I built these hotels to be welcoming, respectful places. What I saw last night went against everything I stand for. Mark nodded firmly, his expression serious. Yes, Mrs. Taylor. We'll organize comprehensive training sessions for all employees, from management down to the front desk, to reinforce respectful service standards and eliminate unconscious bias. I will personally oversee this implementation. Briona offered a faint smile, not of victory, but of understanding. She didn't need to raise her voice or assert her power openly. She knew that the real change would come not from punishment, but from cultivating awareness and compassion within the team. She turned away from the reception, her calm steps resonating softly across the marble floor. Inside the elevator, Briona caught her reflection in the polished mirror. The confident, poised woman staring back at her seemed almost like a stranger, a far cry from the young girl she once was, struggling at the bottom and fighting to be seen. Memories flooded back of those early days when she was just a low-level receptionist, often mistaken for a janitor simply because of her race and modest appearance. Nights of mopping floors, handling complaints, and enduring rude comments from guests who looked down on her. Those moments had shaped her resolve, strengthening her ambition to build something that would stand the test of prejudice and doubt. When the elevator doors slid open at the penthouse level, Briona stepped out, breathing deeply as if shedding the remnants of last night's frustration. She knew that she had already won the real battle, not just by reclaiming her rightful place, but by confronting a mentality that continued to persist despite her success. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Training sessions have been scheduled. All staff will be educated on unbiased guest interaction and professional etiquette. Again, our deepest apologies. Briona read the message, her expression softening. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but it had to start somewhere. For now, she would focus on the future and continue pushing for the standards she believed in: respect, integrity, and humanity. With a final glance at the cityscape beyond the suite's floor-to-ceiling windows, Briona allowed herself a rare, contented sigh. She knew that the hardest fight was not against people, but against the prejudices they carried. And she was determined to keep fighting until every person, regardless of appearance, was treated with dignity. As the door of the suite closed behind her, Briona walked slowly to the armchair by the window and sat down, gazing out at the twinkling lights of Chicago against the dark night sky. Though her exterior remained calm, her heart still carried the heavy weight of frustration. She knew that staying composed was the best way to face situations like these. Situations she had encountered more times than she cared to count. Gently adjusting the soft wool scarf around her neck, Briona's mind drifted back to the early days. The days when she was just an ambitious young woman with nothing but dreams and determination. Back then, she worked as a receptionist in a rundown hotel on the outskirts of Detroit. Her worn-out shoes pinched her feet after long shifts, and the faded, ill-fitting uniform made her feel constantly out of place. She remembered one rainy evening, scrubbing the kitchen floor after hosting a chaotic wedding reception. A well-dressed man, wearing an expensive suit, sneered at her as he passed by. "You really work here? I thought the staff would be more professional looking." Those words stung like a slap to the face, cutting deep into her pride. But instead of reacting, Briona clenched her jaw and continued working, swallowing the humiliation like bitter medicine. She knew that fighting back with words wouldn't change their perceptions. What she needed wasn't an outburst, but a long-term plan to change her own life. Night after night, when the hotel finally fell silent and everyone else had gone home, Briona would stay back, poring over business textbooks borrowed from the public library. She taught herself management strategies, customer service ethics, and the fundamentals of running a hotel. People mocked her aspirations, dismissing her as just another naive girl dreaming too big. They couldn't see the fire in her eyes or the resolve burning within her soul. Those difficult nights were not just about enduring hardships. They were about building resilience. Every time someone underestimated her or belittled her ambitions, she grew stronger, more determined to succeed. She vowed to build hotels where people of all backgrounds would be treated with respect and dignity, regardless of how they looked or dressed. Now, after years of relentless effort and unwavering resolve, Briona had achieved what few dared to imagine. She owned a chain of luxury hotels spanning the country from New York to Los Angeles. Yet despite her success, there were still moments like tonight when she had to prove herself to people who couldn't see beyond their own biases. Her dark eyes softened as memories faded, replaced by the glimmering cityscape outside. Briona knew that leadership wasn't just about holding power, but about using that power to break down barriers and uplift others. She couldn't change everyone's mindset overnight, but she could lead by example and create a culture where respect wasn't conditional or selective. As she sat there, lost in thought, Briona reminded herself that every step of her journey had been worth it. Her success was not just a personal victory, but a symbol of perseverance and self-belief. She would continue to fight not only for herself, but for anyone who ever felt unseen or underestimated, because no one deserved to feel invisible in a world they helped build. The next morning, as the first rays of sunlight crept through the windows, Briona was already prepared for the meeting with the management team. Dressed in a sleek gray suit that hugged her strong, poised figure, and wearing polished black leather shoes that reflected a subtle glow, she knew today wasn't just about business. It was about setting a new standard, about planting the seeds of change in the minds of those who needed it most. The meeting room was tense, filled with a palpable sense of unease. Andrew, the hotel manager, Jody, the receptionist, and several other senior staff members were already seated, their expressions a mix of anxiety and regret. When Briona entered, they instinctively stood up, but she motioned for them to sit. Linda Grayson and Mark Evans were present as well, ready to document and address the issues at hand. Briona remained standing at the front of the room, her gaze calm but unyielding as she addressed the room. "I want to hear directly from you," she began, her voice steady and composed. "What exactly happened last night?" Andrew looked down, avoiding her eyes, fumbling for words. "Mrs. Taylor, I deeply apologize for the misunderstanding. We, we didn't recognize." Briona raised a hand gently, stopping him mid-sentence. "I'm not here for apologies. I'm here for honesty. When you saw me walk in last night, what went through your mind?" Jody bit her lip nervously, her gaze falling to the table. Taking a shaky breath, she finally spoke up. I, I thought you were just another guest. You didn't look like someone who owns a hotel like this." Briona gave a faint, almost weary smile. "And what does a hotel owner look like? Someone more refined? Surrounded by an entourage? Or simply not like me?" Silence hung in the room, thick with discomfort. Jody's shoulders sagged, her voice a hesitant whisper. "I didn't think that far. I just made a quick judgment." Briona took a deep breath, her tone softening but remaining firm. "Years ago, I was just like you, standing behind a reception desk, hoping to do my job well. I know what it feels like to be judged by how you look, to be dismissed because you don't meet someone's expectations of professionalism. But I vowed that if I ever had the chance to lead, I would build a place where no one would feel lesser because of their appearance." She turned to Mark and Linda, her gaze sharp and unwavering. "I want mandatory training sessions for every staff member, not just on hospitality, but on empathy, inclusivity, and respect. This isn't about assigning blame. It's about changing how we think and act." Linda nodded with conviction. "Understood, Mrs. Taylor. We will implement the training immediately and ensure that it's not just a formality, but a fundamental shift in how we treat people." Briona looked back at Jody, her expression no longer stern but almost gentle. "I don't want you to lose your job, Jody. I want you to learn from this experience and grow. Mistakes happen, but what matters is how we respond to them. Change doesn't come from fear, it comes from understanding." The room remained quiet, filled with a sense of realization and reflection. Andrew exhaled in relief, while Jody's eyes glistened with tears of gratitude. She knew she had been given a second chance, not just to keep her job, but to become a better version of herself. Briona didn't linger. She had said what needed to be said. As she walked out of the room, a quiet determination settled within her. She knew the journey of change would be long, but it had started with a simple conversation, one grounded in truth and respect. That morning, as Briona stepped out of the meeting room, a sense of relief washed over her. Walking through the hotel hallway, she noticed the staff moving with a more attentive and respectful demeanor. Their glances no longer carried suspicion or doubt. Instead, there was a subtle air of acknowledgement and caution. Briona descended to the grand lobby, where sunlight poured through the tall glass windows, reflecting off the polished marble floors. The hotel seemed to wear a fresh look, not just in its elegance but in the sense of renewed purpose that lingered in the air. Near the reception desk, Jody was carefully organizing documents, her posture noticeably more composed. Catching sight of Briona approaching, she straightened up, offering a respectful nod. "Good morning, Mrs. Taylor." Briona returned the nod with a gentle smile, sensing the sincerity in Jody's demeanor. She knew that the change she sought wouldn't happen overnight, but this small shift was a promising start. It wasn't about intimidating or humiliating anyone. It was about planting a seed of awareness that would eventually grow into a culture of respect. Before leaving the hotel, Briona stopped by the management office, where Mark and Linda were diligently working. Seeing her enter, Mark immediately stood up. "We've initiated the training sessions, Mrs. Taylor. All employees will be required to participate, focusing on inclusive guest service and eliminating unconscious bias. Linda added, "We've also issued an internal memo stressing the importance of empathy and professional conduct, regardless of a guest's appearance or background." Briona nodded in approval, her gaze firm but calm. "Make sure the training isn't just about checking boxes. I want it to be meaningful and impactful. It's not just about learning policies, but understanding why respect matters in every interaction." Mark agreed wholeheartedly. "We'll make sure it's done right. Your message has been heard loud and clear." Briona looked at both of them with a subtle smile. Leadership isn't about perfection. It's about fostering a mindset of growth and accountability. I don't expect everyone to be flawless, but I do expect genuine effort to improve. With that, she turned and walked toward the hotel entrance, where her car was waiting by the curb. As the car pulled away, she glanced back at the tall, shining building that bore her name, a legacy of resilience and ambition. It wasn't just about owning a luxurious hotel, but about instilling values that resonated with dignity and respect. In the back seat, Briona allowed herself a moment of reflection. She knew that creating lasting change meant more than issuing commands. It meant inspiring others to see beyond stereotypes and embracing the humanity in every interaction. As the car moved along the bustling streets of Chicago, her phone vibrated with a message from Linda. "Training sessions progressing smoothly. Staff responses are positive, and they're showing a willingness to change." Briona took a deep breath, her shoulders relaxing as a sense of accomplishment settled within her. She knew the journey ahead would still be challenging, but the foundation had been laid. Sometimes the smallest shifts in attitude could lead to the most profound transformations. Through the tinted windows, she watched the cityscape unfold before her, feeling a quiet sense of pride, not just because she had asserted her authority, but because she had chosen to lead with understanding rather than retribution. The real success wasn't just in proving her ownership, it was in proving that respect could be learned and practiced, regardless of one's preconceived notions. In her heart, Briona knew that the true power of leadership lay not in demanding respect, but in demonstrating it through action and example. As the car pulled away from the hotel, Briona leaned her head against the window, her gaze fixed on the towering buildings passing by. Deep inside, conflicting emotions still simmered, but she knew she had stood her ground. She understood that what she had just faced wasn't an isolated incident. It was one of many she had encountered throughout her journey. Yet despite the repetition, she never allowed herself to waver. Her thoughts drifted back to the early years, the times when she was just a young woman with worn-out shoes and big dreams. Standing before a boardroom full of skeptical investors, she had felt the sting of condescending looks and dismissive smirks. A black woman wanting to own luxury hotels? Absurd, one executive had whispered to another. Those words had cut deep, but they had also ignited a fire in her soul, one that would never be extinguished. Today, as she faced another challenge to her identity and authority, Briona realized that strength didn't come from power alone. Real leadership wasn't about forcing people into submission or using her status as a weapon. Instead, it was about demonstrating grace and resolve, showing people that respect is not granted based on appearance, but earned through integrity and determination. She remembered the quiet conversation with Jody earlier that morning. There had been a look in the young woman's eyes, a mixture of fear and shame, but also a glimmer of understanding. Briona had seen herself in that girl, once naive, inexperienced, and unaware of the burdens carried by those who broke the mold. Allowing Jody a second chance was not an act of weakness, but one of mentorship, a way to teach her that redemption comes from acknowledging mistakes and growing from them. As the car glided along the city's busy avenue, Briona's phone vibrated with a message from Linda. Training is going well. Staff are responding positively. They're reflecting on their actions and showing willingness to change. Briona nodded to herself, a small sense of satisfaction settling in her heart. Change never happens overnight, but it always starts with awareness, with the willingness to confront uncomfortable truths and make a conscious effort to improve. Looking out the window, she saw pedestrians rushing by, absorbed in their lives, unaware of the battle she had fought and won. She knew her story wasn't just about owning hotels or proving her worth. It was about inspiring others to believe in themselves, even when the world doubted their potential. Her fingers brushed against her phone, and she hesitated before sending a short reply to Linda. Good work. Keep focusing on empathy and understanding. It's not about perfection, it's about progress. With that, Briona leaned back, allowing herself a moment of calm. She knew that the hardest battle wasn't about achieving success, but maintaining dignity in the face of prejudice. She had built an empire from nothing, driven by the belief that respect should be given freely and never based on assumptions. The car sped on, weaving through the crowded streets of Chicago, while Briona's thoughts remained steadfast. Her journey was far from over, but she would continue to walk proudly, never allowing the world to dictate her worth. Because when the world doesn't see your value, it's not your duty to scream for acknowledgement. It's your duty to stand firm and prove through action that you belong, that your presence carries weight, and that your dignity is not up for negotiation. Leadership is not about making others fear you. It's about inspiring them to see beyond appearances and into the heart of what truly matters. And in that quiet, unwavering confidence, Briona found the strength to keep moving forward, knowing that every small change she initiated today would ripple into a better tomorrow. In today's society, prejudice and judgment based on appearance remain significant obstacles for many people. Briona's story reminds us that true strength doesn't come from power or status, but from self-respect and unwavering determination. Don't let baseless judgments shake your confidence. Walk with pride and quiet resilience, knowing that your worth is not defined by others. Change doesn't come from punishment, but from awareness and compassion. Lead by example, show dignity even when faced with doubt, and prove through your actions that you belong. Let respect be rooted not in perception, but in understanding.